Welcome back to the Investing Advantage podcast. Today, I've got a very special guest, Todd Heitner. Now, he is the founder of Apartment Investor Pro, which specializes in multifamily websites for investors in both the U.S. and because I'm Canadian, he's going to be helping me out as well here. So, I actually met Todd through kind of a mutual connection and a gentleman I have a very high level of respect for. He's been on the podcast in the past, Adam Gower. Adam, he's kind of like helping the who's who in raising capital. And so when Adam brought in Todd to really teach and educate people in this kind of very intimate small group, I thought I got to meet Todd. And so I went direct. And I feel very privileged to have him on the show. He's got more than 15 years of experience building websites, helping people raise capital. And so I thought maybe we could start with, because this is a bit of a different approach to the world of real estate investing and raising capital. But how did you get into building websites? Like, what was it that drew you to that, if you will? If you want to start there, or you can start anywhere else that you think would be appropriate, Todd.
Yeah, I mean, initially, when the internet was kind of new, I was just curious about it, and kind of wanted to figure out how web pages work. I found it interesting, and so when I was in high school, I was just trying to take apart websites, trying to figure out how they worked, and initially just kind of as a hobby. But then I kind of got into it, started, making a living from that, and then got into real estate investing websites specifically. Started out doing websites for single family investors. I kind of worked with a coach, somebody that was teaching people how to do that, and did websites for their students. And then kind of branched in, kind of expanded that later, went on to multifamily. Saw there was a need there. There's such a need for investors to have a website for credibility and everything, but it's such a pain sometimes to build it, from scratch, starting out with nothing, trying to figure out how to put it all together. And so that's kind of why I put together a service that made that a lot easier. I just saw that, but yeah, that's kind of how I got into it.
This was, I don't necessarily talk about this very often, but I've probably had 4 or 5 different websites that I've tried to build on various platforms, and the amount of time that went into it, let alone the cost, right? Because the cost is one thing, but the time to figure it out and get the hosting and try to plug it all together. And I sincerely wish that I would have known about you about 5 years ago when I first went down this route, because and that's really why I wanted to engage with you, because the clients that I'm working with, I can see either they have a website that's not very good, or they don't have a website at all. And I think in today's environment, we were talking about this offline, people are going to Google you, right? They're going to want to know, who is Todd, who is Shane, and right or wrong, they're going to judge a book by its cover. And so if you have a crappy looking website, we're going to talk about this, further on, but some of the biggest mistakes that you see, and then I want to share a story, but what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see, people that are trying to be serious as it relates to getting into the world of, say, multifamily, commercial real estate, and what are the mistakes that you see them making?
Yeah, kind of like what you mentioned, like someone's not having a website, for one thing. Like if people Google you and there's nothing there, then what does that say about you? Because everybody has every business has a website. So if you're saying you're this business and you're trying to raise money from people and there's no website to back it up, it just doesn't really, kind of undermines your credibility. Really, it just makes you look like you're not legit, which can kind of scare people off. As opposed to if you do have a website, it kind of shows a certain amount of stability, you've invested something into your business. You're not planning to, disappear tomorrow, but you've put something into it. Or sometimes a do-it-yourself website can look like a do-it-yourself website, which kind of also undermines your credibility, because, sometimes people can tell, it just doesn't look right. And then that, that also looks like, well, if you're the successful company that's raising all this money, trying to buy these deals, why can't you afford to have a decent looking website? Or why did you build it yourself? It just doesn't quite line up. Another thing is just, it's simple, a small thing, but using a free email account like Gmail or Yahoo or whatever, trying to, communicate with people using that. It just also doesn't look professional. I mean, they can be disposable. I mean, if you were going to try to scam somebody out of money, you would use like a Gmail or Yahoo account, because it's not really connected to you. You can get rid of it. No connection. Whereas if it's at your company name, I mean, it's just a different feel to it.
Yeah.
So, um, and just another, I guess, kind of connected to that is just like having a poor online reputation. I mean, it does. I mean, like you said, people are going to Google you, so you should Google yourself too and see what comes up. I mean, it could be your social media accounts and other things. Like, what impression is all that going to give? Not that you want to hide who you are or whatever, but like, or pretend you're something you're not. But like, think about like, look at that stuff from through the eyes of a potential investor and think like, what impression would I get? Like, how comfortable would I be giving this person my money? Based on what I'm seeing here.
Yeah, I mean, so this morning at about 9 a.m., I had a phone call from a gentleman that's invested with me, and this lady that he introduced me to that's invested, and we've never met in person, but we've kind of had some conversations on the phone. And what was interesting is Robbie is his name. He's like, yeah, we just went to your Instagram account and I showed her the video that you put out this morning. Right. And so to your point, like everything, one of the things that I'm hypersensitive about is congruency. Right. And that's why I've always been an advocate for like not pretending to be someone you're not. Right. I mean, I don't wear a suit because I don't wear a suit. Like, I mean, after this is what I wear, like a polo shirt, or you know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
but that's, as one of my mentors calls it, like your OPN, your own personal narrative, your branding. What is it that you stand for? And I mean, the story that I was kind of sharing with you just before we hit record about the gentleman that was trying to raise, just over $4 million, comes to me with 30 days to go, and I did the same thing. I Googled him, right? Because it was a social connection. So I put in the time and energy. But the challenge was he it took me 15 minutes to find his website. I had to go to his LinkedIn profile. Then I had to kind of read through it. And then it was like he mentions it kind of offhand. I go to it and I can see probably why he wasn't promoting it, because it was horrible. Right. And so when I sent it to some of the people that I thought might be interested, as I shared with you, one of the people looked at the logo and they didn't actually send it to me, but they said, if you want to know why I'm not investing, let's have a phone call. And essentially, he said, if someone isn't going to take the time to do a professional logo, I mean, it looks like a sixth grader did it 15 years ago, and he wasn't, he was pretty blunt. But let's face it, if you're asking for $1 million or $500,000 from someone, they are going to be critical, right? They're going to look at you through a different lens. And my thought is, I think investors are looking at you almost to give you an excuse not to invest, right? And the websites that you've created, and the price point, I mean, I suspect it's because you have scale, right? Because if someone came to you and said, "Can you build me a custom site like what you've developed and just do it one off?" That'd be like a $15,000 or $20,000 website. I mean, because it's just so friggin' good. Um, but maybe you can just talk a little bit about the iterations and how far it's come from start to where you're at today with the type of sites you're creating for people. And we'll go with there, and then I've got more questions. So
Okay, sure. Yeah. I mean, initially it was kind of a little more basic, I guess, the website. Like, as we've um, learned more about, apartment syndication things, like we've gone to a lot of events, I listen to podcasts, all that. Like, really everybody on our team actually make sure they all understand what multifamily syndication is, because, um, to really help our customers and make sure we're meeting their needs. Like, we need to understand the business.
yes,
So as that's developed, we've kind of realized, okay, well, this is what they really need. Then is this, for example, like having like something free you can give away to that, investors can sign up for, stuff like that. And just the wording, just like and the layout, just the kind of seeing like what's the standard, what are people expecting to see when they go to a syndication
the
website.
structure.
Yeah, the structure, and
Yeah.
yeah, what kind of content's there. And and just kind of seeing like what are the successful syndicators in this business doing, like what do their websites look like, what features do they have, and like trying to incorporate that into all of our customers' sites. So
So what would be an example of that? Like, because, I've seen them, but someone that's maybe never done it before, right? I'm thinking of a few individuals that I'm coaching right now, and I've told them about, and I'll be sharing some of the links afterwards with them. But uh, I'm trying to think of the best way to put this. It's like, I had a call with one of my coaches, and this maybe will put it into perspective. And I've seen pitch decks for 15 years, right? Because I've been raising money for, well, maybe not 15, but say 12 years. And I'd seen this gentleman's pitch decks. Like, he's at the top of the top in terms of doing this, right? And Orrin is his name. And he pointed out in our last call, this is why these colors are used, and this is why these fonts are used, and this. And so I'd seen the pitch deck 15 times, but until he basically put a spotlight on what I should be focusing on and why, I had no idea. And then I went back to all the decks I've created, and I thought, like, these are horrible. I need to redo them, And it was, but I'm glad that I got that perspective, if you will. So you don't have to give all the secrets, but maybe like one or two that you're just like, most people wouldn't even know to do this, and this is why it's so important.
yeah, I mean, just one little thing too, that I mean, this just an example from like somebody asked me to look at their website. They built their own, and I looked at it, and just the first impression is like something just doesn't feel professional about this. And then as I really pick it apart, I realized, well, the fonts aren't the same size throughout this, or it's not the same font throughout. It's just a little thing, but it just all of that kind of adds to your impression that you get
Yes.
overall. Um, Also, just like calling call like a call to action, like where you direct people's attention, and a lot of times you use color, a different color than you're using throughout the rest of the site to draw attention to a certain thing that you want people to really see first.
Yes.
Because if you have too many things competing for attention, then you don't know where to look basically. And so
Yeah.
so for example, like if you have like a free report or something on your site, like you want to have the button for that stand out, a different color than everything else. It may be different from your overall color scheme, but to really catch your attention, and that way you don't miss it basically. So just a couple little things.
Well, and one of the things that I picked up when I was going through that training with Adam and yourself was the importance of follow up, right? Because if you think about the journey of a person that is going to maybe invest with you, they've got to develop the know, like, and trust. So the website gives the ability to know about you. Hopefully, you can put some personal stuff, and that's where Adam and I really resonate on, is the importance of personalizing it, not using all stock images, like, like that. That's great to start, but to put some of your own in there, right? And I mean, I'm okay with the fact that I've got my brother and I doing handstands on my website, because that's kind of how I am, right? I try to have fun, and it's okay if not everybody resonates with that, right? Like, I mean, you just have to be who you are, essentially. But the last part is the trust, and I think trust is built over time, and that's through stories and through email follow up, right? And so maybe just talk a little bit about um, the importance of that and what
Yeah,
you see some of the really successful people doing.
yeah. So that is important. So like like I talked about, like having something free people can sign up for. That's really just the start of the relationship. They've
Yes.
come there, they've signed up for something, but at that point they may not know who you are, and they certainly probably don't trust you. But yeah, through emails and the follow up process, you can really build a relationship with people. Um, to a certain extent, you can certain parts of that can be kind of automated, like certain things you're going to want everybody to hear. So like information about you and your company, why they can trust you, basically, like having emails that go out that kind of build that trust. And um, but then even like newsletter type emails too, and it's like you said, like sharing something personal. It's good. I mean, um, people are going to ultimately invest with somebody that they like, and if they don't know anything about you personally, you're just like a corporation type thing. You're too cold, I guess you could say. People may not feel as comfortable, so it's perfectly fine to share some personality in there too. But yeah, you do want to build that relationship with people, And there's tools that can really make it a lot easier. I mean, like a email follow-up type system. You can put in program a series of emails that go out, and that way everybody's getting the same consistent experience. You know, they're getting, on day one after they sign up, they get this message that's maybe telling about your company, or maybe talking more about investing in multifamily, why it's a solid investment, that kind of thing, and just sort of having this series that builds their trust, and their
It takes
help them
people
get
on
to
a
know you.
journey, right? I mean,
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
really like some of the people I'm kind of studying under right now as it relates to email marketing. And I mean, there's so many facets to online marketing, if you will, right? And branding and positioning yourself. But at the end of the day, the way I'm starting to think about it is, people that they start over here, and if they're going over here, there's milestones, right? And I mean, I'm just thinking about a gentleman that recently started working with me, and in the matter of 4 days, he went from never seeing me to listening to about 20 podcasts,
Mm.
consumed my book and some content that I had created. Obviously, got my emails. To your point, he got the automated emails. He responded, and then I responded to him personally, right? And it wasn't a generic thing. And then we had a conversation back and forth, and he continued to consume. And by the time we got on the phone, actually, it was a Zoom call. And that's another thing, right? I mean, Zoom now is, I mean, because this gentleman's in the US, right? And he started working with me in 4 days.
Wow.
And that is the power, in my opinion, of developing an online presence, but then content that supports who it is that you are. You know, some of the content that you guys create, because like you said, you're in the business, you speak the language. Maybe just kind of touch on that in terms of some of the important content that a person should probably consider as it relates to positioning themselves.
Yeah. There's yeah. So of course, like your homepage, that should have information about, like, investing in multifamily, kind of what you do essentially, and a little bit about your company. One of the things that we can't pre-make for somebody is an about us page. Like, that is really something that's unique to you and your company, because and I found, like, even for our own website, like, our about us page is one of the most visited pages. People want to see
Sure.
who it is you're dealing with,
Yeah.
who are you doing business with. So that's something really important to have there, because like, it's all about the relationship, and so we want to know who we're working with. Um, but like you were saying, like, with having the content out there, like having like blog posts, for example, or podcasts or other content. Um, like, in our sites, we do actually, most of our plans have a few pre-made blog posts, because that way you're not starting out from
Sure.
scratch. Like, you might put together this really great blog post and put it up there, but it's the only one, and it kind of looks like you're just getting started. Whereas if you have a few, it just kind of add helps you get
It's
started.
less intimidating, right? When you have
Right,
something, and I always find it's easier to edit than it is to start from
right.
scratch too. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's another, people can edit the what's already there, and it's
yeah,
just easier than starting from a blank slate.
yes.
Yeah, the same thing with like a lead magnet or free report type thing, and follow up emails. All of those things are important to have in place. It's all part of your content, and like you said, like, I mean, if you didn't have all that stuff in place with the person you were just talking about, if you didn't have all those podcast episodes and
Yes.
blog posts, like, he wouldn't have. It would have That process would have been a whole lot slower with building that relationship.
100%. Yeah. And,
Yeah.
and I think that's important in the sense that um, it doesn't happen overnight, and that's a good thing in my opinion, because um, it's taken me 2 years of real dedication, and actually longer than that, but really 2 years of kind of focused effort on creating content and delivering value. And the reason I say that it's important is because what that means is the barrier to entry increases, right? You look at
Yeah.
guys like Joe Fairless and Whitney and Adam and the real kind of pioneers, if you will. I mean, they've been creating so much content for 5 years. We're doing daily podcasts that they create a moat, right? That is very
Yeah.
difficult to compete with. And so for me, I just said, look, I'm in it for the long game. I don't need to try to do exactly what it is that these individuals are doing. But I think this is going to be episode 110 or something to that effect. So I remember when I started off at episode 0, or just have my website first, you really do need, in my mind, to play the long game and say, you know what, I'm going to do this, and it's okay that if right now it's a little bit skinny, but I can continue to build it over time, and just know that once you have it, everybody else just getting going has the same hurdles to overcome. I don't know if that's something that you've kind of witnessed with the people that are really successful, because I know you work with the who's who in terms of capital raisers and whatnot.
Yeah, and that's true, and kind of similar to what you were saying earlier. Like I've talked to somebody too that has a podcast, and he said, like by the time somebody comes to him, that they fill out a form like they're interested in investing. By the time they get to him and they've heard his podcast or other things, like it's like it's a done deal. Like they're ready to go. Like there's no convincing them or anything like that. As opposed to there's somebody that randomly found them, on the internet or whatever, and don't know who they are. It's a completely different scenario, because like your podcast or your blog post, all that stuff is like you're sharing your expertise. I mean, you're becoming an authority on
Yes.
multi-theme investing, and that um, when we think about the base of the word authority is author, and
Yes.
really by authoring content, putting out content, you're becoming an authority on the topic, and so we tend to trust people that are producing content, people that seem to know what they're talking about. They know this business. And we all want to work with somebody that knows what they're doing. And so really by putting that content out there, you're showing that you do know what you're doing, and you're separating yourself from those that are not producing that content. So yeah, I think it's really important.
Absolutely. And even beyond just raising capital, I think what it also does is, especially if someone is new to investing in commercial real estate and they want to be taken seriously, and they contact a broker or a lawyer or a mortgage broker, I mean, those individuals are going to Google you just the same.
Yeah.
And if it looks like you've fixed and flipped a single family home twice, and now you're trying to buy a $10 million apartment building, I mean, I just wrote about this today. Like, brokers are looking for deal certainty, no different than an individual that's going to invest with you. And if they don't get that feel in the first couple of minutes from your website, it's pretty unlikely. Like, I know sellers and I know brokers are Googling me every time I make an offer, every single time,
Yeah.
right? And I have to be careful about what I talk about and not sharing too much, because I got to be respectful. But at the same time, I mean, I know that they are watching, right? And so,
Hmm.
I mean, this is just a very, um, you can't hide anymore, right? 10,
Yeah.
15 years ago, it was a very different story, right? You could submit an offer under a numbered company, and no one really knew who you were unless you were kind of an insider. Nowadays, they're gonna do their homework on you. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. It's easy to do that research now. And yeah, and it's true. And I've had people say it too. I mean, even like we had somebody, like one of our customers hadn't done their first deal yet, and they were talking to the agent and their seller, the seller's agent, and they asked about like, what experience do you have, and they just directed them to their website, and they like the website. When they saw the website and they saw that it was professional, and they dropped it. They didn't pursue that anymore. So it really can make a difference, just like in how, the your appearance, like the professional appearance and credibility that can
I
come
mean,
with.
Todd, like, that is so big. I mean, whoever that was, that is a really smart strategy. And the fact that the website could do the speaking, right? Because it's like show, not tell. And it's like, look, look, if you want to see my experience, just go to my website, right?
Hmm.
And then let that do all the heavy lifting versus trying to convince someone. I
Right.
mean, like, the value of that, like, if that was what separates this individual from getting the deal and not getting the deal, that's like 6 7 figures, right? And the difference between getting in the game and staying on the sidelines. I mean, that's huge.
Hmm.
I didn't. I'm happy you shared that, because I think, and that's why I wanted to reinforce it, because I think that if someone just hears that without understanding the implications of how valuable that is, I hope that you start to think about the cost of inaction, right? Like, the
Yeah.
cost of not having a website. Like, what is that true cost? And look, I'm not here to um, I only am reinforcing this because I've seen the value in terms of my own progression, and that's why I really wanted to have Todd on here. Todd, maybe like just to kind of tie everything together and be respectful of your time, what would be kind of next steps for someone that's interested? And obviously, I want you to talk about the services that you offer because I mean, I don't think there's anybody else that I've come across that does it at the same level that you do. So maybe just kind of touch on that.
Sure. Um, well, one of the first steps I would say before you do anything, no matter what route you're going, is to get a domain name, like the whatever
Mm,
yourname.com. Um, Before you get too attached to a certain business name, like make sure that the domain name is available, the .com, get that because I mean that's part of your brand and um, you don't want to like get, register your LLC or whatever and then find out, well, somebody else already has that name. They're using that domain name because that's going to create confusion and everything else. So like you don't want to have to change it later. So get that first, get the domain name, lock that in. I do recommend going with a company you've heard of for getting a domain too, like like GoDaddy or Namecheap or
yep.
even Google domains, like they have those. But
Mhm.
uh, some of the like you might find it a little bit cheaper somewhere else, but you might also have trouble down the road, like trying to use your domain. So I'd recommend sticking with some of the bigger companies. And then from there, it kind of depends on what route you're going to go. Like if you're using our service, like we include web hosting and
Mhm.
we have like pre-made designs and everything already ready, content already ready. Obviously, like you talked about, like it's a good idea to personalize that, put your own, flavor in that and your personality. But it's a good, gives you a great starting point. It doesn't, you don't actually have to, and that's how we've designed it is try to make it where pretty much from day one you can use it kind of as is. You just kind of put in your business name and it's ready to go. But of course, when you have time, you can personalize it. If you're not using our service, then there's a few things you need to think about, like getting web hosting. I don't recommend going with the cheapest thing out there because really web hosting is kind of like renting an apartment, and you don't want to just go with the cheapest thing out there because you're going to have problems, down the road. You're going to have neighbors that create issues, for example. So, um, go with something that has a good reputation and it's going to be used by other people that are running serious businesses. So, um,
Just on the web hosting, because when I
yeah,
heard you and Adam talk about this, I kind of understand it. But so the domain is like the street address, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe just tell that analogy just so that someone understands the importance of web hosting because it is so valuable.
yeah, yeah, sure, yeah. So like the domain name is kind of like your address, like where
Yep.
people can find you. But
Yes.
the web hosting is sort of um, like the land that you're built on essentially, or the like a plot of land, because every website's hosted somewhere. You have to have somewhere to build your website, and that's kind of where that is. And the location is important, I guess, because the same as like with a house or apartment building, whatever, like location is important. And so um when it comes to web hosting, like if you go with really cheap hosting, they're going to just cram a bunch of websites in there because they know that these people are probably not very serious about their business. They just want the cheapest way to get a website up and running. Most are not even going to be using their website, or some of them are going to be using it for shady things that are, whatever. And so you don't really want to be grouped in with them, essentially. So that's why I don't recommend going the cheapest route, because that's where you're going to be. It's like being in a bad neighborhood, essentially, because all that can affect your website. You're all on the same, essentially on the same computer, and so if they're doing stuff that's um, they're what they're doing could actually slow down your website or could get it
Absolutely.
blocked from other services and things. So you just don't, yeah, I don't want to be lumped in with that. um, and you want it to be fast too. You want your website to run smoothly, to be fast, because people aren't going to wait around for a slow website. So again, that some of the cheaper services um, are going to tend to be slower. And also you may have trouble getting good support too, when you have trouble or
For
whatever. So
sure.
yeah. um, but yeah, so that's the web hosting, and then you kind of have to build the actual website. So then and I recommend WordPress as a platform. I mean, there's other stuff out there, but WordPress is one of the most popular, and the reason I like it is it's so flexible. You know, you can there's stuff out there that whatever it is you want to do, somebody's probably already made a plugin or tool to do what it is you're trying to do, and so you don't have to do it all from scratch. And so, um, so like WordPress is sort of like a platform to build it from. It's like the framework, or um, if we're using the analogy of a house, like the structure, of it essentially. And then and then from there, then you've got like the design
Hmm.
and the content, all of that. Like we talked about earlier, even the little things do matter. So you don't want to just again, don't want to necessarily go like the cheapest possible route, and just hire anybody, your cousin or whatever who's put up learned how to build a website in school or something, because all those little things matter. It's not just about getting a website up, but it's getting one up that's going to work for you, and
Absolutely. All the title tags and the SEO and how everything, like, once you start going down that rabbit hole, and I want to stay out of it because then I'm going to get out of my domain of what I kind of understand, but I do know enough that it all matters. And to our conversation earlier, like these small little nuances, like if having different fonts or different sizes or different, title tags or whatever it is that just kind of throw it off, a person isn't going to necessarily know what it is, but it's not going to feel right. And if it
right,
doesn't feel right and that investor bounces, like what is that costing you? And in my
yeah,
opinion, it's significant. Um, I think, yeah, if anybody is sincere about getting a professional website to either raise capital or position themselves as a commercial real estate or multifamily investor, definitely check out Todd's services at Apartment Investor Pro. I think you and I, because we've talked in the past, I'll have a link for guests that they can go and get kind of a special discount, if you will.
mhm,
And it is an affiliate link, so you're welcome to go directly to Todd's website and sign up. But because he and I are kind of building a relationship ourselves, he's been very gracious, and he's given my listeners and people that work with me a discount, and that's I think highly valuable. So what would be the best website? Well, I guess we'll have links, but I mean, just
yeah,
drop yours too, just so people can go and check
yeah.
it out.
Sure. Yeah, our website's apartmentinvestorpro.com, and whether you go directly or go through, the link to get the discount, you'll either way you'll see it. You can sign up for a demo and see that, so you kind of see what it is that we're offering and what the websites look like, things like that, and that'll give you a better idea, of what we're offering.
Yeah, and I will say this: once I came across Todd's services and I looked at the websites that he's created, and then I started to Google all my buddies now because I'm in the podcasting world that are raising capital. I'm like, oh, there's one, there's one, there's one, and pretty soon you realize, okay, so if you're a player in this market, you pretty much have Apartment Investor Pro as the back end. And I'm not saying that just to kind of like pump your tires, like that's the truth, you know what I mean? Like that's just what I've come to realize. And like I said, I sincerely wish I would have come across you a little while ago. But the next website that I'm building, which I'll share with the audience when it's right, will be built on this, and um, I'm looking forward to it. So Todd, really appreciate you coming on. Once again, if you're interested, Apartment Investor Pro. If you want the links, you can go to my website. I'm going to have the resources to go directly there, and you can learn more about how to work with Todd if this is something that you're interested in. So appreciate you coming on, Todd, and
Yeah,
we'll
thanks
have
for
to do
having
this
me.
again.
All right, thanks a lot. Have a great day.
Okay.